Hi, Garfield, friends and family. This is Justin Young, your school psychologist, here to answer a few questions that you have. The great questions that I got asked was, at what age is a student able to get special education services? And then also, what is the way that a student qualifies for special education services? So under IDEA Part B, a student is eligible for special education services from age 3 through 21. So this is an extremely broad question, but the important thing to understand is that all students who are eligible for special education services must have evidence of a disability. They must show an adverse impact and then also demonstrate a need for specially designed instruction. Under IDEA, there are 13 different disability categories. For the student to be eligible for special education services, the student's disability needs to be adversely impacting them in the education setting. A student's adverse impact statement might be something like if the student has a specific learning disability in reading comprehension, we would say that that disability adversely impacts the student's ability to comprehend literal or inferential text. To a student who has ADHD, we would say that that student's disability adversely impacts the student's ability to stay on task, initiate tasks, ignore distractions, or control impulses. A student who has a specific learning disability in reading comprehension, which adversely impacts that student's ability to comprehend text, then that student would be eligible for specially designed instruction in reading, specifically in reading comprehension. It's possible to have additional areas of SDI if the team feels like the student shows a demonstrated need for those. The reason why this really can get confusing is that sometimes students show one of those, but not necessarily all three. So for an example, a student with a hearing impairment has a disability. But if that student is able to get straight A's and they just have a hearing aid, then that student might not be eligible for special education services.
Just simply because there is no evidence of an adverse impact and there is not a demonstrated need for specially designed instruction.
It is up to the team to decide that. And also, it's possible to show a need for specially designed instruction and not necessarily show evidence of a disability. And this is, I think, where a lot of teachers show concern, is that they see someone who's doing very poorly. They do see someone who's lagging behind, who's not completing work, not writing things down. The job of the evaluation team to determine if that is because of a student having a disability. So sometimes students are really struggling in school for reasons that are not related to a disability. If the student is missing a lot of school, they're going to be doing poorly in class. So what we're talking about right now are rule-outs. They're things that the team has to decide is not the primary reason for the student struggling in school. Each rule-out or each set of rule-outs depends on the student's disability. So for example, if we look at a student with a specific learning disability, we're going to see a specific set of rule-outs.
So we have to rule out a visual, hearing, or motor disability, intellectual disability, emotional behavior disability. We have to rule out cultural factors, environmental or economic disadvantage, limited English proficiency, and we also have to determine that appropriate instruction was happening prior to or as a part of the referral process.
So another important part of the eligibility process is actually the general education component. So if a student is struggling, whether it's because of a disability or because of something else, we have a legal obligation to try to meet that student's needs in the general education setting. The questions that we want to ask ourselves are, what interventions have been happening? Has there been progress monitoring on these interventions? What type of SIT meetings has there been? And then has there been parent contact? So if a student shows evidence of a disability and has an adverse impact and shows a need for a specially designed instruction, and if we've ruled out some of those possible things that can be the primary reason for a student struggling in school, and we've documented that we have done the best to try to meet the student's needs in the general education setting, the team can decide that the student is eligible for special education services as the student is not able to access the general education curriculum without changes in the delivery, content, or methodology of instruction.